welcome to Woman Crush Every Day, where we discuss queer media, especially when it is Black and especially when it is woman. I'm your host, Tang B, aka Shaunice,
and I'm your host, Allison, aka Al Wu.
And today we have a special interview with writer, producer, actor, full-on entrepreneur, Amira Shaunice.
What's up, y'all?
Yes, thank
Finally.
you. No, oh my gosh. We've been following your work for a while. Like, had the opportunity, we reviewed Phase 6, loved it, and was like, oh my gosh. Found out you were from Detroit, and was like, say less.
Yeah.
We got to make this happen. So, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we're happy to be in your new home of New York. So let's just talk about, first of all, your pronouns and where you come from.
So I go by she or her. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I've been officially a New Yorker the last 10 years.
Yes.
So coming to New York, all of that, I mean, like, did you come here already producing work, or did you start producing work once you started meeting people and connecting and things like that?
So I did study TV and film in college. So I did have a little background. I was working on like small things like music videos. But when I moved to New York, I had nothing going on. Like, I didn't even have a regular job. I moved here at $300 in my pocket and a job interview lined up. And when I say I got down to my last $5, they called me and said, start tomorrow. And
oh, wow.
Thank God. So I, got acclimated with the city for like the first 2 years, and then I started New York Girls in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then what kind of led you to working on New York Girls TV and creating that?
At that time, like, I had just wrote a book. My friends were loving it. I had like a blog. I used to post short stories, and people were like, yo, I would pay to see this. Like, I want to see more stuff. You should make a show. And I was like, would you watch it? And literally the next day I came to my homegirl and was like, okay, you're going to play Cameron and you're going to be Maya's cousin. And it kind of just came together, just wanting to really have that representation and not really seeing it. So I had to just produce it myself.
So many people were just like, if you don't see it, you just got to create it.
Yeah.
Build it.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So your background is in performing arts. What kinds of things inspire you as a creator?
That's a good question. So many things inspire me. I think just life in general. I really like to people watch. I love hearing other people's stories. I always get inspiration from like my friends, family, or people just telling me certain scenarios, and it's just like, oh, we got to talk about that, or it'll just pick up something in my mind and give me an idea to write a story about. Yeah.
So in terms of like finding community and like people to help put these things together, because making shows that's not an easy feat. That's not everybody can't do that. So how do you put these things together and build community in a space? What was your journey? Coming here fresh too, like not having a whole bunch of people already here. Can you speak to what it took to put that together?
Yeah, so I really started from the ground up with just me. I was initially the camera person, the sound person, the editor. I probably would have been an actor if I didn't have friends or people interested in the project. But I think me building it from the ground up myself and people just seeing the vision, I just started attracting people who were meant to be in my life. So I found a great group of actors who were down with it, down with the low budgetness of it all. And one of my actors actually introduced me to my camera guy who I have now, and he's been with me like the last 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's really just about networking, using the resources you have, even if you have to start small with your friends, your family, and then and building from there. Like now I'm at a place now where I can actually hire people and go through the process. But for me, I look at it like someone auditioning or trying to get a job. Like when I don't know why I'm nervous.
You good?
But no, like I really like just search out my prospects. I want like-minded people. What are their vision? What are they working towards? And I think just me doing it for so long, I just end up attracting that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's dope.
I want to know more about the stories that you tell and where they come from. You've touched on friendship, on romantic love, on healing from relationships, on family relationships. What kinds of stories are you interested in telling, and why are they important to you? Why do you feel like these are stories people love watching?
Yeah, so All of my projects primarily cater to the LGBT community, and that was for me starting out. That was my go-to market because I am a part of the community, and again, I didn't see myself or my group of friends on TV. We had things like the L Word, which I loved, but again, I didn't really see me. Like,
Totally.
so I think that was big in terms of telling stories that we rarely see. I also want to tell stories about people of color, especially Black women specifically, and just how our race doesn't. I feel like people get so caught up on the race versus just the humanity of it all. Like, we all go through the same things. We all that healing journey, mental health, and those are things I want to touch on. Yeah.
So starting on like YouTube, having a YouTube base, like what is that like? What was that like to like start from I don't have people on YouTube like that, and now it's like you have a hell of a following. Like people tune in to what you do. Like what is that like? Oh my gosh. You're like a star. Period. Not even like you're a star. Period.
Yes. It's unreal. It really is unreal. Like I think I pinch myself every day just when people like I've been on the train and heard people talking about my show and not even knowing.
Wow.
And I was just sitting there smiling to myself like that's crazy, you know. But it took a while. Like even going into season 2, we only had about 500 subscribers. And I had did a whole first season. We had about 20 episodes at that point on YouTube. It really wasn't until third season that it just kind of just took off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's dope too to have not stopped. Mm-hmm. You know, I think a lot of people would get through the first one and be like, oh, I didn't cut it.
Yeah.
I'm done. You know, and say, no, and boom, that's fire.
Yeah.
That's fire.
So what do you do now that you have a team, you have a network of people you work with? I think what so many creators get stopped on is, one, that motivation to keep going, but two, how do you continue to finance and fund the projects and make sure that they're lucrative so that you can keep going? What's it like seeking out that funding and keeping the creation going?
The finance aspect is definitely a struggle. I would say probably my biggest struggle at this point. It does delay the process because with me, if I had the funds, I would be putting out a show every month, honestly. So it really is for me just a matter of budgeting. I always pay myself first. When I get paid, I put that 30% towards my business.
That's game.
Listen, pay yourself
game.
first. Pay yourself first. So I really was big on that and just putting that money aside to fund my project. So it's all self-funded. No even crowdfunding. I think I've raised like $2,000 on GoFundMe over the last 7 years I've been doing this.
Yeah.
But now I have people who are interested in possibly picking up the show in terms of like on their network, but we're talking money. So I'm like, okay, you want it? How much is it worth? Yes. So it's really taking your time and networking and finding the people who are willing to invest in you. Yeah.
So like in terms of working with folks, like, I mean, is that something that you want to do? You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, I feel like to have like, this is me, these are my productions. I feel like that's like, you know, you monopolizing your game versus really working, you know, playing with somebody else and, you know, having to change what you're doing. So are there any concerns about that or something like in terms of compromise that you feel like, all right, no, I'm not going to do this, or, you know, like, what do you think about those things? Because like, do you work with somebody else? He's like, yeah, I can get this platform or whatever. It's kind of a loaded question, but I kind of feel like I want you to parse it out.
I think it's a benefit either way because I've been doing it so long on my own, you know, and I think it's important to have that backing, but you can still have that backing without losing the whole creative aspect of it. So I could still possibly be showrunner and have my own ideas without jeopardizing who I am.
Okay.
But also, like I said, it's a matter of who you're dealing with too, because of course you don't want to just sign deals with anybody. You want to make sure they have your best interests at heart. And also, I want to work with people who want to tell the same stories that I want to tell. So it's not like I'm really compromising my work per se. But also, it's like, take this project, make it big, and that's going to still bring my name out. You know, at the end of the day, it's still just going to give me more publicity to do more things that I can have control over. Yeah. So I'm fine. Y'all can take it. But just pay me and, you know, help me along the way.
Yeah.
That's great. So you're looking forward to working with people who are on the same page as you, and you have some new stories that you're going to tell. So tell us about some of your upcoming projects.
Yes, so one project I'm very excited about, I'm working on my second book. So it's going to be a compilation of erotic stories, some true, some, a lot of true stuff going on here. And I'm going to put that out for Pride Month. So I'm super excited about that. I haven't written a book in a couple of years. And it was just refreshing to do, to step away from script writing, because it's so different from writing a novel versus a screenplay. And I want to work on a short film as well. A short film based on mental health, and I want to go back home to Detroit and shoot it because I feel like there's so much opportunity there.
So much.
So thinking of like coming from Detroit, I feel like the LGBTQ scene is like, struggling.
It's
Now,
different.
this past year, I will say in the past couple of years, I've seen some things where I'm like, actually, oh snap, are we coming up? Like,
I think it's coming up. I'm actually working with my friend. We're trying to put together something for Detroit Pride for this year. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So was that maybe a reason or one of the catalysts to maybe leave Detroit, because it's like we don't really have a scene there, or at the time too, when you were like high school age, was that a part of the reason? It's like, honestly, no, let's go find someplace else where there's people, my people.
Yeah, that was a big part of it, because growing up in Detroit, I always felt kind of like an outsider in terms of my interests. And even the people I was surrounded by then, they didn't understand the way I thought. So I knew when I came to New York at 10, I knew I wanted to move to New York. Like, I was obsessed. We went for a 5th grade trip, and it was just like, I'm moving to New York.
Nice.
So I kind of always had my mindset on like the big city. I was a fan of theater. So I think I really believed in the slogan, like, you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So I was just like, let me try. If I can make it in New York, let's see. Who knows what else I could do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Similarly, I wonder what your experience was going to Atlanta. And that's another city where the community is just bigger. There's more going on. Did that open anything up for you? Did you notice any growth in just having that environment?
Those 4 years in Atlanta were the best 4 years of my life. I always say that. Just, I think this experience of going to an HBCU, shout out to Clark Atlanta, and just those like-minded people, I didn't really see that. So, and Atlanta is super big in terms of the community. I actually came out while I was in Atlanta, had my first everything, in Atlanta. So for sure, it's like, quote unquote, turned me out, I would say. It did. It made me want more, and I really started learning about, just the community and hanging out and going places that I had never been in Detroit. We didn't really have too many like gay bars like that. Yeah. So Atlanta was that city for me to really open my eyes to the community.
So I want to come back to your book, erotic book, Lust. And how will people be able to find your book?
So it'll be on my website, AmiraShaunice.com. You guys can definitely check my social media and all that. Once it's ready, I'm gonna promote it like crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I mean, we have to get into it and talk about it too.
Yeah.
Like, yo, check this out.
Phase 6. So you're doing a season 2. Is there anything you can tell us about what we should expect in season 2?
So you will see Jessica's doing a lot better this season. We're still keeping that following 6 stages of a breakup, but this time it's not Jessica. All right, so we're going to see a lot more of April and her relationship story, and just diving into other characters more. I'll give that away.
Okay.
Just a little tease. That's good. That's good. Let it up.
Yes.
Let it up. Well, I mean, we talked about projects coming up. We talked about stuff in the past. I mean, is there anything that we haven't really touched on? You feel like, I want to put this out there. I want people to know.
I really just want people to be open-minded. Like, I'm so focused right now on branding Amira Shaunice versus New York WCE.
Yeah.
So many people love the story, and I get it. It was great storylines. The characters, the actors were amazing. But I want to branch off to other things, and I want to be able to take my following with me and still create more things. So if I can have my audience be open, that's all I ask for.
So I want to get into some woman crush stuff. So we're Women Crush every day, so we crush on women, but we also crush on content creators. And is there a content creator you are crushing on right now?
Anybody, yeah, producing anything like
Yeah, I don't want to say her name. I don't even. She's actually straight.
That's fine.
Scotty Beam. No, I love me some Scotty Beam. Who else? Who else am I crushing on? Always Issa Rae.
Yeah.
Forever Issa
That's
Rae.
real.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
He says that I love her trajectory too, in terms of like doing Awkward Black Girl, and then taking, you know, watching her grow and glow into, you know, Insecure, like in movies and all of this. I'm like, that's what's up.
Yeah.
That's
It's so
really amazing.
inspirational.
Yeah.
Did you read her book? You guys have to read her book.
I haven't.
Me too.
I read it and I felt like our backgrounds are so similar in terms of just how we moved and going to YouTube and just moving somewhere else and having to just adjust. Like, I see a lot of myself in her.
So, in terms of how you see yourself too, like writing versus like producing, what do you feel like I'm a writer, or do you feel like no, I make shit happen? That's what I do. Like,
Yeah.
how do you see yourself?
I like to call myself a storyteller. Yes, I am a writer, but also I love producing. Like, I'm even open now to producing other people's work. Just that whole behind the scenes of it, finding locations, casting for actors, you know, just making sure everything is organized and pulled together. Like, I just love everything about that.
Yeah. Just what is it like? I think working with creatives in the city, and as you grow and expand, and these other projects come up. How is that exciting?
It's always exciting. Like, I don't think it'll ever wear down for me. Like, every project, I'm looking for to go bigger and better. So I'm looking for fresh faces, people who are really just new. And I think that really what drives me. So that keeps me excited, just the hunt and searching for people to work with.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like New York is it? Like, I mean, in terms of living, you know what I mean? Do you feel like, you know what, actually, this is my home. I love it here. I don't even want to go like to LA or something like that. Or do you feel like, no, I went to LA, or I
actually went to LA
test
for
it
a
out
year, just to test it out. I did. I went to LA. I
Okay.
did a web series out there, and I was like, if I like it, I'll stay. But it was just not hitting like New York.
Okay.
So I do. New York really has my heart right now, and I've traveled to about 42 states. So it's just like, if I leave here, where else do I go?
I was like 42. That's solid.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
solid.
Yeah.
Word.
So I also want to just get into a little bit of your personal life. You can go as deep as you want to. But I just know from your shows, you do talk about family relationships, and I wondered, what was your relationship like growing up with your family?
So my family is huge, very huge and close. If no one was at my mother's house, we were at my aunt's house gathering. You know, Sunday dinners at grandma's. Cousins not too far away, go ride my bike over there. But family is super important to me, and also because I recently lost my grandmother, but she was the woman who saw something in me before I knew myself. Like, I was 8 years old, and she was like, "You gotta write a play about the family. You gotta tell this story and do this and that." And she took me to my first Broadway show. And she actually took me to cast before I was even like 8th grade. She went up there. We went into the principal's office, made me meet the principal, did an application. Like, Grandma, I got to take the test. Like, you know. So family is super, super important to me, and I'm my mother's only child too. So her and I are really close, and that's, I think, I feel like they're my inspiration. Really, everything I do is always with my family in mind.
I guess, you know, I was just thinking about my family too, and it's like I in ways, I think it's funny how that familial support. I think I even now I feel like I don't really have that like that. You know, it's like my family loves me. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of like queer identity, you know, it's still kind of like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
See, we didn't talk about that in terms of, they love me, but they don't really. They respect me, but I know my mother, she would love for me to marry a guy and, you know, give her some grandbabies. But I think at my big age, she's just like, okay, it's not going to happen. But it was tough at first, especially coming out. It was my family, you know, very religious Christians. And for a long time, I was the only gay person in my family. So I get excited when I see my little cousins like coming out and just being content and happy with who they are at such a young age. Because I knew I was out in high school, but I didn't come out. I was just afraid. So
Same.
yeah,
So
I'm glad now that my family is there. They support me. It took them a while to even watch New York Girls because, of course, that's not really their cup of tea. But when I had my New York Girls movie premiere in Detroit, like my whole family came out.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy too that for us to talk about finding community, and it's like we all went to the same school and like we were not out. We didn't know. I'm not saying that to nobody. I'm not even. No, but but I love this full circle moment to be like, wow, that's amazing. Honestly, I'm really, really happy that we could put this conversation together.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about what this means for for other people to see this stuff. It's really, really important. I wanted to throw in too. You were talking about like younger cousins and them seeing your work. What is that like for like other people to be like, oh my gosh, my cousin.
Yeah, it's still, I hate for them to watch certain things because get a little risque. So it's like, oh, you watch that? Like, I had my little cousin slide in one of my cast members' DM and she's like, oh yeah, your cousin said I'm fine. And I'm like, what? Why is she watching that? But it really just warms my heart because, again, when I was growing up, I didn't have that representation, let alone somebody related to me. So I try to be that person for them, like, yo, that's my cousin on TV. And I really can't wait. So I'm really at that point where I can take them on the red carpets and give them that experience so they know like it's attainable.
Yeah. That's fun. I kind of want to go back to something you said about your grandmother saying you got to write a play about our family, and that was at 8. So when did your love for writing or your passion for writing start? To have her say like you should write this at 8 years old, she already saw like you have a gift. So yeah, when did you start really getting into writing?
I would say I started acting before I was writing. I used to like watch movies and then mimic them with my dolls and just kind of act it out or make my own version of it.
Yeah.
And then I started, I guess I started writing maybe 9. Because I remember putting on plays, making my cousins be the actors. And it's so funny because a lot of things I don't remember. And my cousin like, you don't remember that? You used to make us do this play every week. So I think it's just something that's always been in me, but it took me until I was older to really recognize it.
Okay. And then did you have any show writers or runners that you looked up to, or any actors that you were like, man, I want to tell stories like them, or at least they inspire me to want to tell my own things?
Plenty. The very first that I can remember, for me, Waiting to Excel and The Best Man, those were like life-changing movies for me. First of all, I wasn't even supposed to be watching Waiting to Excel, but my cousin, who was 16 at the time, she was on a date and he took me with her and she was babysitting. So I'm in the theater like this, cover your eyes for this next part, but I just remember like, oh my God, all these beautiful Black women. I never really saw anything like that. And just that story dynamic that they told with the relationships, it was just like, I was in awe. And then I actually got hurt when I saw The Best Man because I don't know why in my head I wanted to be the first to put me along and to not let them in a movie together. And I saw The Best Man and I was like, what? They beat me to it. And I'm like 10 years old.
So you're coming home to work on a project. Do you, and it's going to be about mental health. So why did you want to go back to Detroit for that story?
So home is where the root is, and for me, this story is so personal, and close related to my family, and I feel like I need that inspiration and that surrounding, and I had to do it in Detroit. Yeah. And plus, a lot of people are on my back, like, oh, you should do a Detroit Girls TV, or you should do that. Especially a lot of people didn't know I was from Detroit, so when they found out, it's like, hello, we're here too. So I definitely want to go home and just shed some light on the city.
So we talked a little bit about your YouTube following and how at first, you were like, hey, it's only a few subscribers. I don't know if they're really biting. What were some of the things that you did to try to increase your viewership? Or were you just focused on like, I'm going to tell good stories? Or what was the balance of that?
I was strictly focused on the stories. Like I never cared about numbers, and I think that's really why I took off. Especially when I started back then, I didn't really know how YouTube worked in terms of the algorithm and the, I was just so focused on the content and what I wanted to put out. So even now, I don't care about the numbers because I know people who are meant to hear my stories, they're going to be the ones to watch it. Yeah. So word of mouth is big. I care more so about word of mouth than
If somebody wanted to do what you do, what do you feel like are the things that's like, this is how you make it? This is what, like what are your guiding principles for creating, you know what I mean? And like how do you stay motivated? And if somebody wanted to create content, what do they need to do?
The first thing I would suggest is be intentional in terms of your content. Don't just do it because, you get views or you want to put your face out there. Really take a moment to sit and say, what kind of story do I want to tell and why am I telling this? And once you have that why, it'll help with all the other logistics. Like for me, it was my grandmother is my why. And it was always bigger than just the YouTube series. So when I had people, quit on me or things didn't work out, or I always had a backup plan. That's my second one, have a plan A, B, C, and D. Always be prepared for something to go wrong because that's what happens in the business, So always have your backup plans and also surround yourself with like-minded people who can help you with your vision.
Word. So you're talking about mental health. What do you do to sustain your own mental health? What do you do to bring yourself joy and care? What sustains you?
Oh man, self-care is like my thing now. Really taking the time to love on myself. Those moments in the shower, that's like my me time. When I get out, making sure, putting lotion on my feet, just little things that I can cater to myself because I can get so caught up in just go mode and producing. So really taking the time to do things I love, sit and read a book, go to theater, go watch a movie. And I like to buy things too. I like to shop, I like to eat. I'm a big foodie, so I feel like something as simple as taking myself to a restaurant and enjoying a nice meal is really self-care. Yeah.
So going to see shows, you mentioned, like what shows are your favorite or anything that you've seen lately? I mean, be it theater, I'm speaking specifically to theater and but if not just theater, other shows, like what's the things in the city that you've seen that you're like, actually that was hot?
Actually, the last play I saw, you guys went I think yesterday.
Skeleton
Crew.
Yeah.
I love that. And I went on Detroit night, which is I didn't even know it was Detroit night until I got there, and it was just like you already know it was so many D hats and Cardis. I'm like, what's going on? It's like it's Detroit night, so that was so inspiring because the woman who created that, like her background is amazing, and she also went to cast too.
Casting.
And she took off with doing the Supremes Theater Broadway show. So that alone. What else did I see recently? It's a couple of television shows I love. Run the World, Harlem.
Okay.
I think anything with like Black women right now is just catching my attention, especially getting to see us in different lights. Like we don't really get to see. We used to the single mothers. Like we want to see the successful women who are married and talking about children and different types of stories. So,
Going to see Skeleton Crew, I feel like I was so pressed to know, like, Felicia Rashad in this playing an older lesbian, like butch lesbian. I'm like, I'm here for that.
Yes. I love seeing her. That was my first time seeing her too on theater. But I noticed the difference between her on the on TV and theater. It's a different world, and I was just excited to witness that.
Yeah.
So, in seeing these creators who are making content finally that includes us and all of that, and you're starting to talk about having your show on networks, and when you think big picture, 10, 20 years from now, kind of where do you hope that the Amira Shaunice brand looks like?
Oh, that's a good question. 20 years from now, that's so far. But I definitely see myself being a brand that's well known. I want to have by then so many different projects, being television, film, I hope to have transition into theater by then as well. I just want to really touch in every lane that I can.
Yeah.
And also just making my name recognizable. Like I want to be that person when you see it, like, oh, created by, or oh, it's gonna be good. You know, I want to be that director. Yeah.
That's and that's dope, because I feel like there are people out there who are making things, and it feels like the intention really is just like, I want to get out there, I want to do something, but you can tell from your work and the way you talk about your work too, it's like it's not about just doing stuff. It's like, no, I want to build, I want to make quality stuff, I want to create a world, you know what I mean? So that's fire.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any creators you're working with right now that you're like, I gotta bring them with me, y'all need to look out for them and watch for their stuff too?
I feel like that about everybody I work with, honestly. It's because I'm so intentional now with who I surround myself by. So every one of my actors, I'm rooting for them like crazy. Like, yes, go, do that. And especially my camera guy too. He and I are like partners, and we're just always rooting for each other and hoping for the best. But yeah, my actors, I'm always excited to put them in more stuff and to get their names out there. Because again, fresh faces, and I feel like so many people need new faces. So if there's anything that I can do to get them to that next level, like, I'm all with it.
So, I mean, talking about putting people on it and rooting for folks, do you have any stories that you would be willing to share of like, where it's like, okay, no, you're working on something and it's like, this didn't work out? I mean, I'm not saying that you have to name individuals' names or anything like that, but any cautionary tales, something maybe that happened, you was like, hey, if you're making this or working on something like this, maybe dodge this, or I don't know, what are some hiccups that you feel like, I learned this through the game, like, you know what, don't do that?
That's just hiccups along the way. I would say that, and for me, how I say I'm so passionate and intentional now with casting and who I surround myself with, I wasn't before. When I first started, it was just like, all right, whoever want to help, come along. Mm-hmm. And so during that process, I realized I didn't really want to help. And then it came down to, okay, I'm quitting, I'm done, and we're in the middle of production. So that's why I say have a plan A, B, C, D. And a lot of people, and I don't care, people have seen the first season of New York Girls, and they'll be like, oh, what happened to Alex and AJ? And it's like, they left the show. So I just, as a writer, that was the next best thing, to kill them off the show and just continue with other stories. So really taking that time to read people, have those contracts in place, super key. And I think just following your intuition. I think a lot of times we know, but you try to just brush it off and like, no. But yeah, trust your intuition. And if you think something's up, just be honest and upfront and ask the person. So you both are, aware.
Yeah. Right.
So you're coming back to the city. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to while you're in the city?
I feel like I always feel like a kid now when I go back home to Detroit, because it's like so much has changed. So I'm really just looking forward to seeing what's new in the city, and especially with like Black-owned businesses. I'm seeing a lot on like Instagram. So I was just making my list, and I'm going to go to those places and check them out, and also just wanting to build with like-minded. How we were saying, we all went to CAS. I would love to see what they're doing in their performing arts department now, and even having a chance to go talk to the kids. That would be dope.
Yeah. That's awesome, and I just keep coming back to the fact that you're making the content that wasn't there for you. But I think there were always like snippets of ourselves that we could find in content growing up. Was there any show where you were like, oh wait, that's almost me? Anything pre-L Word that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, but it really wasn't me though. Still, like, I don't know if you guys remember the show Blossom.
Yeah.
I used to like
throw that. Come on, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was Blossom, like I was that girl, but again, she didn't look like me. But in terms of, that's why I stress the humanity part of it, because just a lot of the stuff she went through, I related to.
Yeah.
So like, I couldn't think of anybody else that I saw was just like, oh, I get it, like that's really me. But Blossom was like the closest.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I do want to say this is dope to have this moment and be able to talk to you. Before we go, I do want to have you just like shout out all your socials and where people can find you and get in touch and all that stuff. So yeah, let's folks know how do we keep in touch.
Follow me, please follow me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's New York Girls TV. Amira Shaunice on Facebook, Instagram, and my Twitter. Twitter is my favorite. _writer_.
I love that.
Yes.
_writer. Let's go.
We put all the links in the bio so y'all can definitely keep following the content. And what can people do to support you in the meantime?
So in the meantime, guys, please go on the GoFundMe and just donate to Phase 6. We're working on the season 2, but I really could use you guys' helps with backing. So any dollar amount helps. I know it's hard out here for everybody. So if I had $1 from every subscriber I have on YouTube, I'd be able to produce about 6 more shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you're frustrated and you like, I watched everything on Netflix, I watched everything on Amazon Prime, you just take that subscription, transfer it over, put those coins on something that looks like you. And enjoy that. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, until next time.
Peace.